Okay. Item number 3 is approval of the agenda. Anybody have any questions on the agenda? If not, I'll take a motion. All in favor? Any opposed? The agenda is approved. On to item number 4, which is our public comment period. It's limited to 3 minutes per individual. Are there any members of the public that would like to address the group? Okay. On to item number 4, were there any submitted public comments? Okay. Item number 6, comments and updates from state and federal agencies. I'll start with VDOT.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I have a couple of announcements today. First, on the Round 6 Smart Scale. Hopefully y'all are aware by now that the Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment presented to our Commonwealth Transportation Board back at their January 14th meeting the staff, what we're calling the staff scenario of recommended projects for Round 6. We had 11 of 31 projects that were being proposed for selection, worth about $139 million. Next steps for that, we'll be working with our Commonwealth Transportation Board members on solidifying that list. We also have the 6-year plan public hearing, which will come up April, May timeframe. We don't have a date for that yet, but the plan is for the Commonwealth Transportation Board to adopt a consensus scenario at their May meeting, which will be included in the 6-year plan once that's approved in June. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out or see me after the meeting. We can certainly talk. Next, just a couple of training updates and application updates. So for the revenue sharing and transportation alternatives programs, both of those programs will have pre-applications opening up here soon. For both programs, the pre-applications will open up on April 1st and close 5 p.m. on May 30th. So that's for the pre-applications for both programs. Now, for the full applications, that will be, Smart Portal will open up on August 15th and close at 5 p.m. on September 15th. We'll be sending out an official announcement on that here shortly once the Smart Portal opens. We will have applicant training webinars for both programs. For revenue sharing, that will be on March 5th from 10:30 until 11:30. And then for the Transportation Alternatives Program, it'll be March 19th from 1 to 3 p.m. And with the meeting minutes, we'll include hyperlinks to be able to so you can sign up for those trainings. That's all I had, but I'll turn over to Sonia or Angela if they have.
Good morning. I just have 2 announcements. The first announcement is that our Central Office Local Assistance Division sent out a survey last week in regards to the Project-Wise Deliverables Management System. That's a tool that we use to transfer submittals between the locality and VDOT. The survey went out to consultants, localities, and other VDOT users asking for feedback on how the system is working, and also to establish new trainings. So if you could share that with your staff. That survey is due on February the 14th. So we have another week or so for comments. And then the second announcement is that we are planning to have our district locality day, our lap circle, on Wednesday, June the 11th at 9:30. We are still working to finalize the location, but I wanted to get that date out. And those are all the comments I have.
Okay, thank you. Court?
Good morning, Madam Chair. A brief update. Just want to make everyone aware Port of Virginia did have another successful year. In 2024, we grew over 7% with calendar year 2023. We also continue to make tremendous strides on our projects, both at Norfolk International Terminals. The optimization taking place on the north end is making good strides, as well as the commissioning of 4 new ship-to-shore cranes at VIG. And then just of interest, if you drive by Portsmouth Marine Terminal, as many of you know, we continue to support Dominion Energy on the Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind Project. And some of the largest pieces that we'll see associated with that project are currently there on that terminal. So if you're driving through the Midtown Tunnel and you're curious, there are some really big pieces and some different looking pieces like transformers, like actual substation sitting there at PMT. So just a point of interest, wanted to share with the group. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't believe there's anybody from DRPT, military, FHWA. So item number 7 is approval of the consent items. I believe everybody's had a chance to review the minutes and the tip amendments. Are there any questions? If not, I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve?
Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, the consent items are approved. All right, item number 8 is a regional performance measures and targets. And Keith is going to have a presentation for us.
Good morning, everybody. It's that time of year again where we have to come before the group here and discuss the annual regional performance measures and targets for the HRTPO. So for those of you that are new or need a reminder, federal legislation requires that states and MPOs use a set of federally established performance measures and also set targets and monitor progress for each of these measures. So the task for this comes down to the TTAC, and in order to help with these targets, the TTAC formed a regional performance measures task force. This group met in December, so the numbers that we'll be discussing today were ones that the task force came to a consensus on back at their December meeting. So in terms of the actual measures, there's annual targets and there's 4-year targets. Today we'll be mostly going over the annual targets, which are in the areas of roadway safety and transit. However, we also have 4-year targets in pavement condition, bridge condition, roadway performance, and freight. I will have a couple slides at the end to discuss those because it is the midterm period and we can discuss adjusting those in certain areas if we so choose to. Just as a reminder, when we do set our targets, we can either choose to adopt the VDOT statewide targets, but report the measures specific to our area. So for example, if the state sets a target of 900 fatalities, for example, we would report that target, but for the number of fatalities in our area. We can also choose to select unique MPO specific targets, or we can use a combination of the both. So let's say for fatalities, we could do an MPO target, unique target, and for injuries, we could choose the state target. There's no rhyme or reason to how you set your targets like that. Also, as a reminder, there are no penalties for MPOs for not meeting targets. Some of the state targets, there are penalties or requirements if you miss your targets, but for MPOs, there are no penalties whatsoever if you do not meet your performance targets that we established today. So starting with the safety targets, there are 5 targets that we need to set on an annual basis, and those are the number of fatalities, the fatality rate, number of serious injuries, the serious injury rate, and then when we look at active transportation, it's bicyclist and pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries, the number of those combined. Now, historically, this group has set the safety targets based on a concept of vision zero, and that's where we look at the number of fatalities or serious injuries, and we try to reduce that number by a set number each year so that by the time we get to the horizon of the LRTP, which is 2050 right now, we'll reach a number of 0. So the first time we needed to set these targets, I believe, was 2018, and every year since those 2018 targets, this group has set a target based on this vision zero concept. The state, however, when they set their targets, starting in 2020, they decided to go with a more data-driven model-based process. So they have a model where each year they input, I think it's about 36 different factors that they look at and try to determine based on those factors how they think the number of fatalities and serious injuries will change throughout the state. That means in recent years, actually, that they have set increasing targets for number of fatalities and serious injuries. However, the IIJA that passed a couple years ago now actually added a requirement that states are no longer allowed to set safety targets that are increasing. They either have to be level or show improved performance and give a justification for why that target was chosen on the statewide level. So based on that, VDOT in the last year or two has changed their they use the same methodology, but if they see increasing targets through the model, then they set their target at flat from the 5-year average leading into it. And that is what VDOT has done again with the 2025 targets. So their model was producing a number that showed an increasing number of fatalities and serious injuries. And so they have set their statewide targets looking to produce a level 5-year average based on the last 5 years. So with all of that, to start with the fatalities, As you've heard me say way too many times up here recently, the number of fatalities has unfortunately been increasing in our region. If you look at the most recent number in 2023 for the metropolitan planning area, it's 159 fatalities, I believe we had in our region. Sorry, 157. But as you can see, over the last roughly decade, it has been largely increasing each year, unfortunately. Now, we do have preliminary numbers for the year 2024, and it looks like we'll probably see a slight decrease in our region. The December numbers still need to come in, so it's still a little bit up in the air, but we think that number may be more around the 150 range this year. So lower than we saw in 2023, but unfortunately still way too elevated from what we've seen, over the last decade or so. So just keep that in mind as we talk about this. But if you look at the Vision Zero concept, based on the last 5 years of data you see on here, that would produce a number of 139 fatalities for a target in our region for the year 2025. Using the statewide method that I described recently, it would be 146 fatalities. So there is a difference, but the Vision Zero number is lower when you look at that. We also need to look at the fatality rate. That's simply the slide I showed you previously on the number of fatalities divided by the amount of regional VMT that's anticipated. So for the statewide targets, they actually used a 2.48% annual increase in VMT each year from 2023 to 2025. Historically, that's pretty high, pretty far on the high end, but what we've seen over the last year or so is sort of in that area. Post-COVID, we are seeing the increases in volumes here coming up toward that range. So for our targets, we use that statewide target of 2.4% annual increase in VMT. So base the number of fatalities from the Vision Zero concept and then this estimate of VMT, and you get a Vision Zero target for fatality rate of 0.878 fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles of travel. By comparison, in 2023, our fatality rate was 1.04. So that is a pretty good decrease that we would be hoping for by setting that target. Moving on to serious injuries, it's definitely better than when we look at the fatality numbers. It's more flat than the steep increase that we're seeing. But we do still see roughly about 1,600 serious injuries in any given year here in our region. So using the Vision Zero concept and decreasing that by a set amount each year, to 2050, that comes out to a 2025 target of 1,514 serious injuries. That is also quite a bit lower than the state method produces. Serious injury rate, same thing as the fatality rate. Use that number of serious injuries and you get a target of 9.54 serious injuries per 100 million VMT. Last is the bike and pedestrian fatalities and serious injuries combined. The trends in this is interesting. Some years are down, some years are up, but if you look over the last decade, it's actually largely been consistent around 200 fatalities and serious injuries per year. So if you use the Vision Zero concept for 2025, you get 182 fatalities and serious injuries for active transportation, and that's down a little bit from what you see from the state. So as I mentioned, the working group met in December to discuss these safety targets, and the group came to a consensus that there was no reason to stop using the Vision Zero targets. It's understood that they're much more optimistic than realistic when you use the Vision Zero targets, but once again, when you're talking fatalities, deaths, serious injuries, it's a little bit different than some of the other stuff we look at transportation. So the group did come to a consensus that we should use those Vision Zero targets. So if this group decides to move ahead with those here at the end of my presentation, then the numbers you see in the left column would be the targets that this group would establish for the year 2025. So moving on to the transit targets, starting with transit asset management. There's 4 categories that we're required to set targets for, and those are in areas of rolling stock, equipment/service vehicles, transit infrastructure, and transit facilities. So you can see the various measures and classes there. I won't get too deep into the weeds on that. We actually don't set our own targets per se here as part of these because the transit agencies in our region must set their own targets for each of these categories. For large tier 1 agencies like HRT, they must develop and carry out their own transit asset management plans and produce their own targets. Smaller agencies such as WADA and Suffolk Transit, which are considered tier 2 transit agencies, they are eligible to participate in what are called group transit asset management plans. And in the state of Virginia, those are run by the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. And WADA and Suffolk Transit have chosen to use the statewide targets. So in order to come up with our regional averages, all we do is we take a weighted average of the various transit asset management targets that HRT, WADA, and Suffolk Transit produce for their agencies. So this is a little difficult to see, but it's all the different categories and asset classes that we need to set targets for. The HRT targets are on the left for 2025, and then the WADA and Suffolk Transit targets are to the right. And then on the far right are the, if you combine and do a weighted average of the three agencies, those are the regional targets that you get. Finally, transit safety. There are 4 categories that we need to look at, and that's fatalities, injuries, safety events, and system reliability. I do want to note, though, for each of these measures, you need to come up with a separate target by mode. So it's not fatalities for your system, it's fatalities on your bus system, fatalities on your light rail system, fatalities on demand response, things like that. So the next few slides, you'll see a lot of numbers coming at you, and that's just because you have to look at it on a per mode basis. Similar to transit asset management, tier 1 agencies make their own public safety plans, public transportation agency safety plans, sorry. And HRT has their own plan, and tier 2 agencies are eligible to use the DRPT statewide plan. Once again, for these safety targets for transit, we just merely did a weighted average of HRTs, WADAs, and Suffolk Transit's averages. So these are the targets, safety targets for HRT. They have a target of 0 fatalities on their whole system by mode. Injuries, it's 76 for annually for the bus and 0 on other modes. And then you can see from there the other targets that HRT has set. For WADA and Suffolk Transit, the statewide targets are rates. So it's less than 0.5 injuries, per example, per 100,000 revenue miles. So you just multiply that by the system usage to come up with the WADA and Suffolk Transit targets. Finally, when you combine the two and do a weighted average, these are the transit safety targets that we will be asking the group here to approve today for each of these categories. And I'll have it again on the final slide when I ask for approval of those. Finally, I do want to talk about the 4-year targets. This is the mid-period time for the 4-year targets. So at this time, states have the opportunity to adjust their 4-year asset condition and system performance targets. So that's roadway performance, bridge condition, pavement condition, and freight, sorry. And so they have the opportunity to adjust these 4-year targets that the state has set here at this period. Any MPOs that established any of their own 4-year targets also have the opportunity to adjust the targets at this time, as long as the MPO and the state can agree to those targets. And then any that are adjusted by the state, the MPO may choose to continue using the state targets or use their own. So that's a lot for me to say. The state chose not to adjust any of their targets, so there's no action for us to take on those. But the one thing I do want to mention is we did set one 4-year target unique to Hampton Roads, and that was for the non-interstate national highway system pavement in good condition. And the reason the group decided to choose that one 2 years ago is because the statewide targets were much, much higher than what we were seeing in Hampton Roads. We think some of that has to do with how Hampton Roads between, the various cities and their various departments versus the state, which is much more VDOT maintained. So the state, I believe, had about a 32, somewhere in there, percent target for pavement in good condition. Whereas in Hampton Roads, if you look at the conditions, we are constantly in that 14, 16, 18%. So we knew there was no way we could achieve a 30-some% target to match that. So ultimately, this group approved a greater than 14% target on those, on the non-interstate NHS system pavement in good condition. And so based on the numbers we're seeing over the last couple of years, which is right at 16%, we didn't think there was any reason to recommend making any changes to this target. So all the stuff that I mentioned on the last 2 slides basically is to say we don't see any reason to adjust any of the 4-year targets. So with that, all we're recommending for you to approve today are the 2025 safety and transit HRTPO regional targets that you see on the slide. I know that's a lot, but with that, I'll open it up if there's any questions anybody has.
Thanks, Keith. Does anybody have any questions? I just have one, and you may not know the answer off the top of your head. So we've been doing this since 2018,
I believe 2018.
and we've set targets. Have we always set them on Vision Zero?
Yes, the Vision Zero targets, I believe with fatalities, we have always set Vision Zero. I want to say the first year for maybe serious injuries, we did the state target and then did Vision Zero every year after that. But fatalities, I believe every year since 2018, we have gone with the Vision Zero concept. And especially at the beginning, but really every year, this discussion comes up of optimistic versus realistic. And looking at that, should we consider a target that might be more realistic? Or, when you're talking fatalities, is any fatality acceptable? And that those two kind of, work in parallel with each other. But the group has always come to the consensus that it's better to have that optimistic target and kind of tell the story that no fatality is acceptable, and we're aiming to get to a number that gets down to 0.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have we ever met the targets?
Not recently. That being said, even if we had flat targets recently, with the increases we've seen, it would be difficult for us to achieve them. In the state as well, even with their increasing targets, they've had problem achieving their targets as well.
And I think there maybe was a presentation previously at a meeting that addressed this, but the serious injury is kind of flat, but fatalities are going up. What do you?
We've looked at that data, and it's muddled a little bit, but the amount of speeding has greatly increased in our region, especially reckless speeding. And I shouldn't say in our region, statewide, nationwide. Since the pandemic, the amount of speeding has greatly increased. So the thought is that the results of those crashes, unfortunately, are more severe, and that's why we're seeing the increase in fatalities. We've also seen an increase even though we've seen the number of crashes with pedestrians and bicyclists go down, we've seen the number of fatalities go up. So when those crashes do occur, unfortunately, the results are much more severe than they were before. So that's a couple of the reasons we think we're seeing that fatality increase. But like I said, the 2024 data looks like we will see a decrease, not a huge decrease, but at least it's pointing the right direction, we think, once the December data is fully come in. But that's the reason we think largely that we're seeing those increases.
Thank you. If there's no other questions for Keith, I'll take a motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right. Item number 9 is a 757 Express update from Ray with HRT. And I believe this presentation came out of our meetings with all the stakeholders to see what you'd be interested in. So thank you, Ray, for being our first person.
You're quite welcome, Madam Chair, and good morning, members of TTAC. Let me just get the right glasses here. Okay, I'm here today to provide an update for the 757 Express program. As a reminder, the General Assembly in March of 2020 enacted legislation that gave financial opportunity to HRT to enact a regional backbone system of high-frequency services that cuts across all 6 member cities and, irrespective of what city we're operating in, provides 15-minute service on these 13 regional backbone routes, as well as financial assistance for capital investments in a program where we had very little capital investments. I'm here today to talk about the progress of the program. Here are the 13 routes. There are 3 in the peninsula and 10 in the south side cities. When fully implemented, and the only thing I should say right at the beginning that's holding us back right now is the lack of bus operators. But when fully implemented, RTS program, the Regional Transit System Program, or 757 Express, it has many names, will provide an additional 200,000 annually hours of revenue service and over 2.4 million vehicle miles of service. That will provide better reliability for our customers that we move every day with a faster commute time, because we'll be having buses coming every 15 minutes instead of what primarily running 60 and 30-minute headways. The routes were specifically chosen. They're some of our top performing routes that were hungry for more frequency because they connect to major retail, employment centers, commercial activity corridors. So they were specific in mind. Along with the 13 regional backbone routes, part of the 757 Express are also our MAX routes. We have 9 commuter routes that basically emanate from park and rides spread out through the region and go primarily to Huntington Ingalls and Newport News Shipyard, as well as Naval Station Norfolk. Along with the high-frequency service that the program funds, we would need 48 new buses. We're receiving the last 8 buses this year. The fleet today was 300. When the last 8 buses arrive, the fleet will be 348 buses. In addition to the capital investment in rolling stock, It's also got an element of the program that invests in technology. We hear most often from customers who move about the country and experience what I call modern technology and say, why doesn't HRT have it? We're about to unveil real-time mobile fare payment, which allows a point of your cell phone to not have cash in your pockets to drop in the fare box, but you can have preloaded on your phone the ability to lay your phone down on the fare box sensor and deduct from it what you have in your account. Mobile fare payment also will provide the opportunity to reload through your debit card or Zelle or any other methodologies an amount of money that you choose in a month, a week, or even just a day, fare media, so that you really can go cashless, which is high time we caught up with that. Now, in addition to that, real-time bus information is now available as we speak in your phone in terms of if you're waiting at a bus stop, you scan the QR code on the sign, and it tells you exactly how many more minutes you have to wait for the next bus to arrive at that particular stop. If there's a delay, it'll also convey that right into your cell phone in terms of what to expect in terms of delay versus what is scheduled. A little bit about the RTS service frequency enhancements that have been implemented to date. There have been 3 routes of the 13, 2 on the north side, the Route 112 in Jefferson and the Route 114 in Mercury Boulevard, the Route 20 that runs between Norfolk and the oceanfront on Virginia Beach Boulevard. I prepared these graphics to give a sense of not only the performance and the red. All 3 slides have a red vertical dotted line that represent the month and year that the high frequency service was implemented, but I want to keep it in context of what I call the post-pandemic world and the pre-pandemic world. Normality kind of ended for HRT in terms of ridership in the month of March of 2020, and you'll see that on every slide that I'm about to show you. The drop in the dark days of the pandemic is always there when we cut back service and ridership dropped. The last normal performance year for us in terms of stellar performance you can see on this particular side for Jefferson Avenue is in fiscal year 19, which straddles half of 18 and half of calendar year 19. And then you can see the precipitous drop. The climb back and then some has been slow but steady. And this is true not even for the RTS routes, but for almost every route we have. The patterns look the same, even if you look at the local bus routes. But what's most exciting about the Run 12, and I should say, the 112 operates on Jefferson in Newport News in a north-south fashion. It's the north side city's version of the Route 20 on the south side. It is the most productive route, carries the most people on a typical daily basis, and it touches just about every major employment site you can think of along Jefferson. It's a very long route that runs way up at Patrick and Denby area, all the way down to the old southeast community to Newport News Transit Center. The good news here is since it's the first one that went, and since its implementation back in October 22, we've seen 38.6% increase in ridership in that time frame. And you can see it's busted past what I call a good year in fiscal year 2019. And it continues. That little dip is slightly exaggerated, is just a representation of the period of November, December, which we always see dips in those months because of the holidays. So we're really excited. It really does prove if you give folks who are dependent on transit more frequent service, they're more likely to use it because you're not clock facing it once an hour. You have 4 buses an hour. I have a similar one for the Mercury Boulevard route on the 114, mostly in Hampton, a little bit of Newport News. It was implemented in May of 2023. You can see peak performance back in FY19 at the level of about 30,000 trips a day, a month. And you can see here we've busted through that. And all indications when I started to look at the January data, which just concluded, there's another uptick. We're starting to approach 35,000 monthly trips in the 114. It's an east-west route, primarily oriented along the big corridor in Hampton, Mercury Boulevard, again, providing that connection to Newport News, but as well as to downtown Hampton and HTC. And it's another workhorse route on the peninsula. And then finally, the Route 20, which in the Commonwealth, I think there's only one other route in Northern Virginia that might have the same characteristics. It is the busiest route in terms of the absolute number of people carried. And you can see in the pre-pandemic, we were carrying about 90,000 passengers. We're not there yet, but with the reintroduction of 15-minute service, we've seen a significant uptick, again, around just shy of 40%. And again, January numbers look strong. So we're really happy about that. The 20 on the south side really is a route that a lot of folks depend on to get to work at the oceanfront. Many of the employees that work along the resort area emanate out of Norfolk. But the 20 also has many different taskmasters, I'll call it, on the way. It's one of the longest routes we operate. And we touch a lot of different activity centers, including the Virginia Beach Town Center, Pembroke area, Newtown Road Light Rail Station, and then several touch points in the city of Norfolk. So in addition to the investment in enhanced services, and I will say before I leave service, we are scheduled to implement the next 15-minute service frequency on the Route 15, which is Military Highway running from Evelyn Butts in Norfolk all the way down to Robert Hall, just practically in walking distance from here. 3 cities help fund that service today, but they fund it at a level of 30-minute service. This will bring 15-minute service for our customers. And it's another top 10 performing route. So I expect the same characteristics this October when we implement the 15-minute service on Military Highway. Now, in addition to service, we have the capital side of the program that the General Assembly money is used for. It starts with bus stop amenities. I've told this story before. This group may have heard it before. When I arrived here back in 1997 and started driving around the region, I didn't come from here. I came from up northeast, but I was appalled at the condition or lack of passenger amenities at bus stops. At that time, we had over 3,600 bus stops with less than 100 passenger amenities, shelters, and benches. And for the most part, I saw people sitting in overturned shopping carts, ditches, grassy fields, literally in sidewalks with no protection from weather, no ability to protect anyone in a wheelchair that needs covering. And I asked the basic question when I got here in 97, so why is it? And it turns out there was no capital money because HRT doesn't have a dedicated capital funding. You know, everything we do capital-wise is through grants and discretionary programs. And the little bit of money they got through some old grant opportunities like TAP and others was put into passenger amenities, but we had about 120 out of our 3,800 bus stops that had some type of amenity. We have today 2,700 bus stops. And what's really exciting about the amenities program is that to date, we've implemented, and I broke it down by cities for everyone to see, nearly 300 additional new shelters on top of the 120 we had. Our goal is in the first round to get up to 625 shelter-protected bus stops, but the money is in perpetuity unless the General Assembly changes their mind. And we can keep going till my goal is to see every one of our 2,700 bus stops have some type of passenger amenity, treating customers, our fellow human beings, with some type of dignity as they wait for a bus. In addition, we also have 77 stops that have at least a bench and a waste receptacle. I thank each of our city members and our city partners in public work and planning because you all control and own the right-of-way. HRT is a guest in your right-of-way, so we work individually on a site location. The city traffic folks come out with us to look at the opportunity for shelters. We have 4 different shelter characteristics, from a standard shelter to what we call a skinny shelter, to at least afford some protection. And I also often say is a customer's first experience using transit is not when they board the bus, say good morning to the operator and drop their fare in. It's how you treat that customer at the bus stop. And it's extremely important that if they have a good experience at the bus stop while waiting for the bus, they will continue to be your customer. The other big capital program elements is to finally rectify historically 3 key transit centers that have large daily activities of citizens using these transit centers. In the city of Norfolk, our 3rd busiest transit center in the entire system that we run of 68 routes, in terms of people that move in and out of what is essentially a long linear bus stop, is at Evelyn Butts. On a daily basis at Evelyn Butts, there are 1,700 people that move through there, connecting with 8 different routes. But it's on, you can see in the photo on the left, it's on street. There's no, it's not a very pedestrian-friendly environment. It's adjacent to a civic league that it's not too happy sometimes in terms of the amount of trash and people that are lingering, or as they call it, loitering. We've been working with the city of Norfolk for years to find an off-site facility to construct something not as quite elaborate as downtown Norfolk Transit Center on the right, but something that takes it off the street, takes it out from behind the water tower and the car repair lot, and puts it in a configuration with sawtooth bays, with custom amenities such as restroom operator amenities such as restrooms, real-time bus information on displays. And we found a site recently, I can't say where, but it's very near here. And we're in the process of acquiring that site. There's $8 million programmed to build a facility to take this very important transit center and take it off street and afford passengers a real way to stay connected to our services as they transfer from one route to another. Nearer to us, there's another long linear lineup on Robert Hall Boulevard, which is the photo on the left, where the old Kmart used to be, that the Amazon warehouse and truck parking facility is there now. Passengers, I don't have a pointer, I pointed out, but from the bottom of your photo to the top of your photo, we have shelters along the way. Robert Hall is our 8th busiest location. We have 760 people who move through this facility on a daily basis. We have 7 routes, and eventually we'll need 8 bus bays for the future 15-minute service that will occur here. We're working with the city of Chesapeake and our commercial real estate broker to find a piece of property to take this off of the on-street operation. It's really sad to see on a rainy day, people get off by that, nearly by that Burger King, if you're familiar with that location at the bottom of the photo, and run all the way up to where the top is, where that curvature is. There's a shelter up there to make a connection. So again, I showed a picture of Ward's Corner, which is in Norfolk on the right, just under 564. That is the goal for the kind of thing we want to build. We are looking at some vacant property nearby, and this is anticipated to be a $6 million project that'll be fully funded by the RTS program. Then finally, another key transfer center that's taking on more and more meaning. We're working with Tidewater Community College of Virginia Beach, who've agreed to set aside some property in a parking lot that they have. The TCC has 6 routes that come in, and we'll need 8 bays to service all the activity that pretty much terminates in this portion of the southern part of Virginia Beach. And this is going to be a $4 million investment, again, with restrooms, amenities, real-time arrival and departure information. Right now, we operate on a ring road in another lineup a little bit north of this picture. Perhaps the biggest, not perhaps, the biggest capital investment is the building of a new bus operations and maintenance facility in Virginia Beach. This is a rendering of a location that we're talking with Virginia Beach about right now off of Corporate Landing Parkway, off of General Booth Boulevard. HRT today only has 2 operating divisions, one at 18th Street in Norfolk and the other one in Hampton at 3400. The south side is a very big physical footprint. Nearly 1/3 of our service leaves 18th Street on a daily basis to head out east in Virginia Beach or south in Chesapeake, running what we call deadhead, no revenue passengers, to get to the first point of that alignment. From a bus operating perspective, it's very inefficient. The agency's always needed a second operating maintenance facility to equitably distribute the bus movement such that we can save cost. This location will be home to up to 100 buses and also be home to the 16 trolley vehicles that we run on the wave. The small facility we have at Park Avenue and 19th is functionally obsolete. It's over 35 years old now. The buses that we operate can't even be raised on a lift because the roof is so low. So it'll serve 2 purposes. And right now the design plans also call it to have future capabilities. It'll be designed for electric bus charging with overhead catenary contact wires. It's going to be a modern, state-of-the-art facility. It has some administrative offices. There won't be any passenger activity. This is simply a place to take care of 100 buses and park them overnight. We anticipate this project, when all is done, to cost in the neighborhood of $130 million. Again, funded primarily through RTS funding and some state money. Some of the, at a glance, I call it Southside Maintenance Facility enhancements is it'll help house the 48 buses we run to provide that 15-minute service. It'll have up to a capacity for 100 additional buses, which relieves a burden at 18th Street as we contemplate electrifying some of the fleet at 18th Street, we would lose some bus lanes and storage bays in order to accommodate the electric charging equipment. So it's compatible to take 100 buses out of our facility in 18th Street, where we store over 180 buses every night, to make room. It'll have charging infrastructure for the electric buses. There's going to be an operating cost savings over a year of, we estimate, of about $650,000 simply by not deploying everything out of Norfolk, Virginia. With the 15-minute service, the routes that'll come out of there, we project an additional 6,700 new weekday riders every weekday, with 7,000 more weekend riders. It creates 125 permanent jobs in Virginia Beach, everything from highly skilled electrical engineers who take care of the electrical equipment, our operators, our supervisors, and maintenance folks. State-of-the-art net zero energy facility is our goal. There's a lot of things in the design related to make the building net zero. And as I said, it's a $130 million project. We are in discussions with the city of Virginia Beach now about the site over at Corporate Landing. So that's really what I wanted to provide, is a quick update on the progress. The only thing holding us back from doing more RTS, high frequency service, is our lack of operators. We're chronically short operators, and as you double headways of frequency, you double the amount of operator needs. But we're working very hard in partnership with our cities and other areas to hire operators who have commercial driver's licenses. So with that, I'll stop and ask if you all have any questions.
Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Okay, item number 10 on the agenda is Hampton Roads 2024 Datathon, and Sarah Kidd is going to do the presentation.
No, I don't think I left it there.
Hello, good morning. So I'm here to represent the PDC and TPO team that competed in the Hampton Roads Datathon last October and provide you an overview of our winning project, which we called Shady Stop. So it ties in nicely with the last presentation. I'll be talking about bus stops. So the Datathon is a one-week challenge for teams to develop some sort of a solution to an issue that relates to the theme of the event, which changes every year. This year it was infrastructure, which is quite broad, but the key is that you have to use any public data that's available. So the purpose of the Datathon is actually to facilitate data sharing, provide some networking opportunities, and promote the region. Invite young people to participate, give them a little bit of professional experience. So the participants are generally a lot of local government staff and then university students and professors who form the teams. So I believe there are about 13 teams this last time around. So this event was started by Civic Lab Norfolk, and they're a group that promotes data science, open data, and transparency with data within the city of Norfolk. So they've been doing that for 3 years now. So it's on its way to becoming a long-term event. So before we talk about the project, I just wanted to acknowledge our team members who are from both PDC and TPO. They're listed there and pictured there. And also to show off the grand prize, which was this championship belt. And if you haven't seen that yet, it's out in our main lobby, and it's kind of a fun prize. So the most challenging part of doing an event like this is actually coming up with the topic, something that you can reasonably complete within a week's time. So again, we're all doing our other jobs and then trying to do this competition on top of that. So after much discussion and research on available data, we settled on looking at tree canopy in relation to bus stops in the region. So we did publish the results of this in a story map, which is this is a screen grab here. And if you'd like to follow along with the code there, you can scan that. But otherwise, the link is in the agenda and then here on the slide, which I think will be posted online later. But you can, all the maps and things that I'm going to show you, they're interactive and you can take a look at them more closely online. So again, the theme was infrastructure. So bus stops are a part of what we would call the gray infrastructure, which includes our roads and parking lots, buildings and things. And so all of that built environment can lead to urban heat islands where it's a lot warmer than it would normally be without that infrastructure there. And so the tree canopy is part of green infrastructure. And so in an urban environment, that can help mitigate the effects of extreme heat. And so the photo that's shown up here was just to show an example of the difference in temperature between a shaded and non-shaded corner there, the pavement. And so when you think about passengers who are waiting to get on the bus, I think most of them would probably rather be standing in the shade on a July afternoon. So the goal then was try to identify which bus stops in the region could benefit the most from increasing shade, perhaps through some sort of a hypothetical tree planting initiative, a tree canopy initiative. So again, this was a demonstration analysis, not an actual study, but it did still produce some interesting results and useful results. So the first data input that we had was from the open data portal for the DRPT. This is all of the bus stops in Hampton Roads, and there's about 3,200. So the map is showing the 4 different transit agencies all in one map. So that was our starting input. The next input for the tree canopy, we actually obtained that from some land use and land cover data from the Chesapeake Bay program, it's a 1 meter resolution product. And so in order to identify what percent tree canopy is at each bus stop, we created a 5-foot buffer around the bus stops. This is all a GIS analysis, and then assigned that percentage to each bus stop. And so that's the map showing the results of that. So the increasing green value shows the higher percentage of tree canopy. So it's a little bit of a deceiving map when you're looking at the whole region because it looks like a lot of green right there. But we did, our analysts on the team kind of dug into the data a little bit more. And so what we found was that almost 85% of the bus stops in Hampton Roads have 0 tree canopy coverage. And that about 7% of the stops are completely covered by tree canopy. So the charts are explaining that, and also showing the type of land cover around the bus stops, and most of that is going to be roads or impervious there in those blue colors. So the second data input into the analysis was an urban heat island severity index. And this came from the Trust for Public Land, which is a nonprofit. So they've measured the urban heat island severity on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being mild heat areas and with the 5 being the most severe. So then we grabbed that value from this data and again assigned it back to the bus stop data to create this map. Which just showing the severity of the urban heat island according to this data that we use, and then how it's distributed around the region. And then we analyzed that a little bit more and discovered that 25% of the bus stops in Hampton Roads are in a high or severe urban heat island area. So that would be a score of 4 to 5 according to this data. And so about 89% of the bus stops that are in that 4 or 5 index have 0 tree canopy compared to 85% of all of the stops. And so again, our analysts look at the data. We did a little bit of correlation work with these charts, just looking at the comparison with the land cover and then the heat index. And it obviously showed a high correlation there. So the result of this then, again, we were trying to identify, potential candidate sites where if you wanted to do some sort of a tree canopy study, then this would give us some, the candidate stops to look at. So we ended up finding 132 out of that 3,200. And we ended up choosing the stops that have 0% tree canopy, and then the most severe urban heat island index value, which was 5. So that was 132 out of all of those. And I know the color is a little hard to see here, but there's some green The green stops are the ones that are the candidates. And what was sort of interesting was that they're actually more in the suburban areas and at the ocean front, which I guess makes a little more sense because there's not many trees out there. But so that was kind of an interesting finding from this. But again, this is according to the data that we used in the methodology that we came up with in the time we had during the week. Now, the last component of this project was that sort of acknowledging that we had some limited information about the bus stops, and we actually were curious about how many shelters were out there because we didn't know. So I'm glad to hear that from earlier. So we proposed doing some sort of a public survey where passengers could take this survey on their phone while they're standing there waiting at the stop, and they could say, is there a shelter here? Is there shade here? Does it need shade? Where do you think the trees should go if there was to be shade here? So those types of things. They can put, this was a survey 1, 2, 3, so they could place their location on the map and add a photograph. And so this data could potentially be used to refine those candidate bus stops if this were an actual project that we were going to do. So in order to wrap up here, so we did end up having a successful demonstration of how to integrate various open data sources together to try to find a solution to an issue. As I mentioned, there are some limitations with data. Of course, there always is, with availability, the scale of the data, attributes of the data. So we used what we were able to find for the region, which is sometimes challenging. And finally, don't discount crowdsourced data. It's potentially an input to your process that also involves the community. And finally, so I've presented this a few times to different groups, and there was some interest in the data that we created that as a result. And so we ended up loading the GIS data up into our own open data portal on HRGO, just hrgo.com. The links are here on the slides. Again, when this gets posted, there'll be live links that you can go directly to that and download. So we put the bus stops and that tree canopy percentage and then that heat island severity index onto the bus stop so that anyone can download and use that for any other kind of project. So that's all I had. And I'll take any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yep.
Anybody have any questions? I just have one. So you said you did your normal job while you did this? Was
Yes.
Okay, well, that's pretty good for
Yes.
a week's worth of work with other
It's
stuff going on.
well, this is the third year we've participated. Get a little bit better each time at figuring out how to, but like I said, the initial part of this, all the discussions on what are we going to do, like you're starting from nowhere, right? Except for infrastructure. And so there's a lot of seeing what's out there and talking, what can we do? And yeah, so it's challenging, but yeah, in the end, I think it ended up with a nice project and well received. So yeah.
Great job. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, on to item number 11, which is VDOT Hampton Roads District Operational Challenges. And Ken Raynard is going to give us a presentation.
Madam Chair, while Ken's going up there, just want to introduce Ken Raynard. He's our District Traffic Operations Director for Hampton Roads District. Obviously, with the size of the network, complexity, volume of traffic, river crossings, et cetera, Ken has a very challenging job. So what he wants to talk to you today is some statistics on the operations side, some of the challenges he faces, and offer you an opportunity to ask questions. With that,
All right.
Ken.
Thank you, Todd. And I also want to recognize Miss Allison Richter in the back. She's our Deputy for Operations and Maintenance with VDOT and works directly with Mr. Hall. So again, thank you for your time. We talk a lot, VDOT, about major projects and smart scale and those types of things, but we don't always communicate some of the operational stuff, right? What it took this morning to get through rush hour, for instance, right? So I appreciate the time this morning. We'll talk through a little bit about that. So VDOT Hampton Roads District, by the numbers, right? So 11 major cities, 9 counties. We have nearly 10,000 lane miles that we have to operate and maintain here in Hampton Roads. 900 of those on the interstate. 5 million folks, or 5 million vehicles pass through our sensors every day, right? The last census in Hampton Roads, I think we're about 1.8 million. Obviously, that grows in the summer to 2.5 or so, but a tremendous amount of traffic flow on our interstates throughout the day, I will tell you that I also put, the bulk of my day is the 3 waterway crossings that are extremely important to us, those red circles up there. That is critical to how traffic flows within Hampton Roads. Our economic and our quality of life depend on that, on keeping those open. If any one of those 3 are down for any period of time, 30 minutes or an hour, that sets the tone for congestion throughout Hampton Roads throughout the day. If it's down for 2 hours, 4 hours, it will not clear, congestion will not clear until likely 8, 9, 10 o'clock in the evening. That's how critical it gets, right? So we spend a lot of time on those waterway crossings to make sure we have the right assets there to keep those open at any one time. VDOT and Hampton Roads also maintains 15 of the 25 special structure facilities in Hampton Roads. So if it's a tunnel or if it's a movable bridge, we classify that as a special structure. It takes a lot of care and feeding to keep that up. It's important to the vehicles that transit those, but it's also important to the shipping traffic that goes through there as well, right? And unfortunately, we have 15 of the 25 that are in the state. Express lane networks, I think you've all seen that. That's something that we have the work in progress. We're still constructing that. We have some in some of the segments in operation right now. We'll cover that here in a little bit. But that's an important innovative way to make sure that we're getting traffic through as much as we can. Jamestown Scotland Ferry, we sometimes think of forget about that, right? That is a critical waterway crossing. I would consider that the 4th waterway crossing for Hampton Roads District, especially if you live in Surrey County or Williamsburg. That's how you get to work. That's how you get your goods and services. That's how you go to the doctor. All of those things are pretty important. We transport about 2,300 vehicles every day, about 900,000 throughout the year. So pretty important to us. We have 4 ferries that are out there. 2 at any one time are usually in operation, again, 24/7. So bad weather, Christmas morning, they're out there getting the vehicles across the James. A little bit more about those waterway crossings. James River Bridge at one point was the longest bridge ever constructed in the nation when it first was built, right? 4.5 miles long. It is 4 lanes, limited shoulders that are out there, unfortunately, but it does have a lift system in it, obviously. It opens via schedule. They schedule a lot of openings, right? But it's also on demand. So if a tug or with barge or a ship shows up, it's going to open up. It doesn't matter if it's rush hour or in the middle of the night, it's going to open up. That's critical to the Port of Richmond to get that traffic and goods up there, right? That's how they receive most of all that traffic. But we also put about 60,000 vehicles over that bridge every day, right? So critical waterway crossing for us. Monitor Merrimack, same thing. The tunnel itself is 1.2 miles long. You add the trestles in there, it's about 4.5 miles. Again, 4 lane bridge tunnel. You can see in the tube there, limited shoulders there again, right? So things like debris and accidents and all that stuff is just harder to deal with through that tunnel facility because it is only 2 lanes that are moving through there in each direction. It's critical to shipyard when that opens up in the morning. A lot of the rush is people going to the shipyard at 2:30. I will tell you at 2:32, Monitor Merrimack is now slammed with traffic coming back southbound on 664, right? About 80,000 vehicles through the Monitor Merrimack on a daily basis. Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, again, the tube itself, 1.2 miles long. Facility, again, if you add the trestles and everything else along with that, again, about 4.5 miles. Again, currently 4 lanes. Hampton Roads Express Lane, our expansion project, obviously is ongoing. That's going to double that facility. That's going to be great for us. Right now, just congestion with no incidents. Westbound through that tunnel, I back up to Granby on a daily basis. Eastbound, I back up to King Street, Rip Rap Road area on a daily basis. You add an incident in there, and obviously that backup extends, right? I put about 100,000 people through that tunnel every day, right? So pretty important. When we say we spend a lot of time and effort on those waterway crossings, it's for a reason. All right, Express Lane Network, I think a lot of people have seen that. That's going to be an additional, when it's done, 45-mile network all the way from Bowers Hill to Jefferson Avenue. Those bottom two segments are in operation right now. They are open and tolling, and the remaining segments are currently under construction. The rest of those segments are meant to sync up with the expansion tunnel. When that's complete, the whole 45-mile network will be open and ready for business. So that's an important project for us that's ongoing. All right, a little bit about incidents. So this is just the interstate, not the waterway crossings. I track those separately. We'll talk about that here in a second. But you can see we deal with about 7,000 a month just on the interstate, right? Obviously that goes up a little bit during the summer when we get tourism and all the rest of that in there. That's a tremendous amount of incidents. You can also see the green bars there. When COVID happened, what happened? A lot of people stayed home, but a lot of people were still forced to go to work. But what does that mean? It's an open roadway. I can now go 80, 90 plus miles an hour, right? But that means incidents go up, unfortunately, right? So 2021, it wasn't until we started coming back to work that the incidents started to come back. But we're also see that starting to go up now in 24. A large portion of that is just enforcement of the roadway. We'll talk about some of the challenges there, right? So 7,000 just on our interstates on a monthly basis. I also wanted to show you about the security and the police activity. So that is increasing, especially in 2024. That the right-hand orange bars are going up and up and up. Road rage is a problem. Gang members is a problem. Shooting on the interstates is a problem. Fentanyl is a problem, right? All those impact our roadways. State police shooting happens on the roadway. Generally what happens is for state police to do their investigation, they have to stop all the roadway, get several troopers to come out, walk the roadway, look for shell casings, that sort of thing. And that could take an hour, 2 hours. And now I have a full directional closure of the interstate for that long a period of time as they complete their investigation. Just over the last 3 weeks, we've had some significant incidents on our roadways with regard to shootings and other police pursuits that happened on the interstate, right? So that's going up and up and up. And I just wanted to make sure that you all were aware of that. All right, we talked about tunnels, but the roadway crossings are, those waterway crossings are also important. Anywhere from 2,200 to 3,000 incidents just at the tunnels. So if you add that to the interstate, I do almost 10,000 a month. That's what we have to deal with, right? So what does that mean for the tunnels? If you do the math on 2,200 on average a month, that means I'm dealing with 70 to 80 a day at the tunnel. That means that since this meeting kicked off, I've already stopped HRBT twice, and I've stopped Monitor Merrimack at least once, right? 40 a day at HRBT, multiple incidents per hour, right? So it's very common for us to have something on the north end and then something also on the south end that we have to deal with and make sure that we get across there. So pretty important. We stage a lot of resources to make sure that we have the resources there. We'll talk about that. But the one good thing that we have, I'm very proud of, is that we have the best clearance times in the state. A very NASCAR-like, right? We send a team out there with wreckers and safety service patrol and tunnel supervisors and crew leads. I have incident management coordinators that respond literally in just a few minutes. So our average is about 15 to 16 minutes for clearance times. And again, the best in the state with regard to the VDOT. All right, I would say enforcement of roadways is our biggest challenge. I don't have I have amber lights, I don't have blue lights, right? But we talked about fatalities going up, right? So speeds are certainly increasing. Reckless driving speeds are more and more becoming the norm. I have stretches of 64 that are more than 20 miles above the signed speed limit is our average speed. Same thing on 264, especially in the eastern part in Virginia Beach. Those add up, fatalities add up, high speeds, crashes. There was a discussion earlier of why, speed certainly a big factor, but I would also say seatbelts. I'm always amazed at the number of folks that end up dying on the roadways that did not wear a seatbelt, right? I get the pictures pretty much on a daily basis. The car at some point doesn't really look that damaged, but the person's not wearing a seatbelt and was ejected out of the vehicle or unfortunately sustained a lot of damage, right? So that is something that is unfortunate, but our numbers are driven by that. And like I said, police activity, all those things are increasing over the last year. We talked about the 2,200 a month on that tractor trailer incidents. That number is not large, but when that happens, it's impactful, right? It takes longer, especially if the cargo is, if it's turned over, if the cargo rips open, the cleanup efforts there are all pretty important and take time. Generally, there's hazmat that's involved in that as well, which brings in a whole nother level of resources that we need to bring in to help clear that up. Electric vehicles are something else that we struggle nationwide to deal with fires. There is no magic foam or any other material besides water that you can really put on there, right? So the nationwide accepted way to deal with an electrical vehicle fire is thousands of gallons of water. It would take that long and that much effort and that much water to put the fire out, but then also to cool it down, right? Also, those batteries retain heat for a long period of time, which means the wreckers are not going to want to load that vehicle for a period of time because it has to cool down. All those things add to the time that our roadways are impacted and a lane is taken to be able to deal with that. Inspection station stoppages, right, especially at the tunnels. I have overheight vehicles that I have to deal with. HRBT westbound is our shortest tube. If you put a tape measure from the ceiling down to the roadway, it's 13 feet, 10 inches. We're signed at 13.6. But there are tractor trailers that are constantly being turned around because they're overheight, right? They would impact the tunnel, so we have to turn them around so that they don't do that. We have a lot of construction projects and other things ongoing in Hampton Roads. That transitions to a lot of wide loads, super loads that come through our facilities, right? We tend to, we work with DMV to get most of that traffic through Monitor Merrimack. Those tunnels are wider, they're taller, they're easy to handle, but I still have a fair amount to go through there. A lot of those wide loads and super loads have speed restrictions, 15 miles an hour, right? Getting them through that 4.5 mile facility is sometimes challenging. Hazmat, like we talked about, propane from the RV community when that spikes every spring, summer, and fall, right? So folks that bypass the inspection stations or don't come through are challenging for us as well because we have to turn those vehicles around or to be able to inspect them. You've all seen population growth. Hampton Roads, a fraction of a percent every year it grows, but over time, 10 years, that adds up, and that obviously adds to the problem. You obviously know about the tourism. Major construction projects for us to keep ahead of the game on the congestion and keep Virginia moving. There's obviously a lot of construction projects that are out there that we're getting through just to be able to make sure that we're set and ready to go for the near future and the far future. Disabled vehicles. This is something that's also spiking, right? A few years ago, we put some constraints on state police on who they can pull over and for what they can pull over, right? So state inspections, for instance, are not one of those things. That's a secondary offense. That is driving folks potentially not to take care of their vehicles as much as they potentially would. So what does that mean? That I've now got disabled vehicles either on the shoulder or in the travel lane that we have to deal with, and those numbers are growing, right? Extreme weather events are something else we also have to deal with. The snow recently, you've seen that. Also hurricane evacuation. The routes from North Carolina up to through Hampton Roads are still there. So even if a large storm were to hit North Carolina, we would still see that large impact. Obviously, if the storm hits Hampton Roads, another huge impact to us. All right, so what are we doing about it? Well, enforcement of roadways, again, the number one. We constantly work with state police. In fact, Mr. Hall has given the state police spaces in the VDOT building, and they're in our district building. They're there with us. We see them on a daily basis. Alice and I meet with them on a regular basis. I talk to them routinely during incidents and those types of things, right? Automation is something else that you've seen that is working, but we've got to get the speeds down, right? So there are some pilot programs out there for work zones for cameras, much like you've seen in some of the cities and the counties that are out there. Those cameras are starting to pop up, and they are effective, and they do work, and they do bring the speeds down. On the traffic incident management side, I have a traffic operations center. It's 24/7. It's in Virginia Beach off of Rion Drive, off of 64, right there. That's where all the magic happens. So we watch the roadway continuous through hundreds of cameras and dispatch accordingly when we see those accidents happen. Safety Service Patrol, those orange and white pickup trucks on the top right picture there. I've got 17 out there right now this very second that are roving the actual roadways. 17 in the morning for us, 17 in the afternoon, and then I have 12 in the overnight. They're constant, and we're adding more with the express lanes that are coming up. So they're constantly out there. They're helping those disabled vehicles. They're helping with the accidents. They're helping taking the lanes. They're helping fire and state police as they work the incidents out there. But those are assets that we're providing out there. Dedicated on-site wreckers. So those tunnels that we talked about, I have at a minimum 2 rollback wreckers and a heavy-duty wrecker staged at the tunnels, at the island, on the island, so that they can literally respond in about 2 minutes, right? That's how we get those 15-minute clearance times, is the tunnel and the wreckers are there before fire is there, right? So they're already working the scene. We're already working stage to get the vehicles out of the roadway so we can clear them as soon as possible. Legislation, we're constantly working with members there to try to improve wherever we can improve, to get, again, all of those efforts to keep Virginia moving. We don't do much as far as the communication campaign that isn't joint in some way. We're working with the VSP, the port, Coast Guard, whoever it ends up being, so that the messages that we need to get out to the community come from multiple different sources, and we're actually a part of that. You may have seen some our changeable message signs, the CMS messaging. We've tried to make improvements on that so that individuals are offered some more information. Like if you're coming 64 East in the Denby area, you're approaching JRB, you're approaching Monitor Merrimack, you're approaching HRBT, you get information on the traffic at each one of those facilities so that you can choose how you would like to get to the south side, right? And all that is fairly real-time information. So trying to make improvements there as we go along. The Drive Safe Hampton Roads campaign has been something we've done now for the last several years with the trucking community. Innovation and technology, that's something I'm also very proud of in VDOT. It is sometimes very easy for a company to cut on R&D or cut on innovation, but we spend a fair amount of time and effort and funds on that to improve, right? What new software, new tools, what new devices might be out there to help us, again, keep Virginia moving, and we're constantly doing that. Integrated corridor management, that's a fancy term for we're working with each of the cities. We do monthly meetings with different cities to make sure that we're integrated, right? If there is an accident on the interstate next to a city, it will likely impact the city streets, and vice versa. If there's an accident, a large accident near an on-ramp for the interstate, but the accident's in the city, it's also going to impact our interstate. So that partnership is important. Where are the detour routes? What is the signal timing when those incidents occurs? Communication between their operations center and our operations center is something that's very critical, and We put a lot of time and effort into that. Traffic management plans, especially for the major construction projects. The HRBT expansion project is a great example for that. We have a large TMP that's up and running for that, and it's a way, innovative ways again to keep traffic moving both on the interstate and on the city streets. We do a tremendous amount of safety and speed studies throughout the year, hundreds. How can we improve? If we see a problematic area, again, we try to attack that to see and make sure that we're being as safe as we can, but we also solve it as much as we can, right? We don't do anything now without our smartphones, right? Waze, Google Maps. So VDOT has representatives that work directly with them so that we're constantly keeping our roadway up to date, right? If we have a change to the roadway, we make sure Waze and Google Maps and those agencies are aware of that so they can, again, project the best information to the motorist as well. Port of Virginia, huge for us, right? Getting the goods in and out, especially when the bridge went down in Baltimore, right? We got a lot of influx down here. We work with them on a monthly basis as well. That tractor trailer flow from the port to outward is extremely important for our region. So we put a lot of effort into that as well. So those are the mitigation efforts that we have in place. That's basically the information that I wanted to send out today, and I'll take any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you so much, Ken. That was a great presentation. Very informative. I had no idea. Anybody have any questions? Ken?
Yeah, just a quick one. I wasn't aware how many shootings there actually were on the interstate. What? Hopefully, gladly, I haven't been involved in any of those. But
yeah,
what do you have a number on or an estimate of how many occur on a given month? We'll say.
I'd have to go back to state police for that, but it has been increasing. So you know, back in the day, if somebody cut you off, you're basically just going to flip them off, and everybody goes on, right? But now it's we drive next to them and we shoot into the other vehicle, right? So there is a fair amount of gang activity that potentially happens on city streets, but then the escape, if you will, gets onto the interstate, and that pursuit gets onto the interstate. So those things are definitely increasing. I just don't have the exact numbers, but
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Okay, on to item number 12 is our 3-month tentative schedule. You can look at that on, it is in your agenda, but next, we're having a long-range transportation plan after this meeting, and there will be one next month as well after the meeting. And there's for your information, which is our LRTP meeting minutes and HRTAC monthly executive report, and then the HRBT expansion report. And number 14 is announcements. Dale's gonna.
Yeah, just to build off what Carol said, we'll have the LRTP subcommittee. We'll probably start a little bit after 11 here in this room. We'll go ahead and get started, and then we'll break after the first agenda item for lunch. And then.
Yeah, and we'll also have a HRTO Transportation Operations Subcommittee meeting. It'll start right at 11:30, and it'll be in the 757 room.
And to round it out, earlier, Sonia mentioned about the upcoming TA set-aside process. You're going to need a resolution of support from the HRTPO board. So please mark this down. We're going to need to have your request letters by July 1st. We do not have a board meeting in August or September, which the submittal would be over by then. So we'll have to go to the July board to get those approvals. So just mark that down. Make sure you get that to me by July 1st. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, John. Item number 15, any old or new business for the group? Okay, seeing none, meeting's adjourned.